I say to you that most of the opinion polls are based on people almost self-selecting, where they sign up to become a panel. I've got to say to you, it doesn't happen often in a lot of the working class areas that people are signing up to become panel members of the opinion polls, and therefore most of the opinion polls are underestimating the support in working class areas for independence. What they now show, however, because there is always a lag between reality and the opinion polls, and what they now show is if every single convinced yes voter convinces one more voter in the next 2 weeks, then on the 19th of September we're going to waken up in an independent country. That's the simple reality. I think more and more people are understanding that the only thing that's holding us back from independence now is fear. Fear. That's the only thing that's holding us back. If we examine the big questions, I think it's absolutely vital, and this is a point I'll be emphasising in there. Freedom. Freedom is what this is all about. Some people might be saying to me, oh Tommy, you know, you came up from Glasgow today, you've had the Braveheart CD getting played in the motor. Is it really about freedom? We're not exactly in shackles and chains, we're not exactly in prison, we're not even in handcuffs, and I know a thing or two about being in handcuffs, I can tell you. Just in case any of you have got a journalist, none of it for kinky reasons, by the way. I'll tell you what, folks, I'll tell you what, we're in political handcuffs. We might not be in literal handcuffs, but we're in political handcuffs. What I mean by that is since 1951, this wee country, Scotland, has rejected the Tory agenda. We've rejected the creed of greed. We've rejected the privatisation of public services. We've rejected the idea that the way to motivate the working classes is pay them less and get them to work longer, but the way to motivate the ruling classes to cut their taxes and increase their bonuses. This wee country, Scotland, since 1951, has rejected the idea of a Tory government, and yet, here's the political handcuffs. Since 1951, we've had to endure 35 years of Tory government. 35 years of government we never voted for. So when I say this referendum is about freedom, what I mean is it's about the freedom of the people of Scotland to at long last get the government they vote for. That's the freedom you're going to have if you vote yes. That's a freedom. That's a freedom, brothers and sisters, I would argue is taken for granted by every other country in the world. Every other country that's got the right to control its own destiny, the right to control its own ideas, they take for granted that the government they vote for is the government they get. For 35 years since 1951, that hasn't happened to us. Mrs Thatcher never had a mandate in Scotland. She didn't have a mandate, but it didn't prevent her from taking an axe to the industrial base of Scotland, the steel yards or coal yards. She took an axe to the shipyards. I had somebody ask at a meeting the other night, Tommy, is the shipyards going to be safe in an independent Scotland? And I gave them one statistic. The one statistic is, in 1983, 26,000 people were employed in the shipyards across Scotland. 10,000 of them employed in Glasgow. 2012, 6,000 people employed in shipbuilding. 6,000, 3,000 in Glasgow. Why would you think that shipbuilding was safe if we stay with the UK after 82% of the jobs have went since 1983? Brothers and sisters, shipbuilding isn't safe if we vote no. But you know what? No job's safe if we vote no. Some of you may have seen the story. Danny Alexander, I'm sorry if I'm going to offend people here. I like to call him the ginger rodent. Danny Alexander. And I'm offending people with ginger hair, and I'm offending rodents, so I apologise to both of them. When he was going into the cabinet meeting 2 weeks ago, in the back of his limousine, he had a dossier that was open, and the photographers were taking pictures. And they were able to take enough pictures to show that over the next 12 months, the number of job losses across the UK as a part of the austerity measures that have already been announced, but not implemented, is 490,000 job losses. 490,000 job losses. 60,000 in Scotland. 60,000 in Scotland alone. So see when somebody says to you, what's a no vote all about? A no vote means 60,000 losses in public sector jobs, health, local government, education. That's a direct consequence of austerity. I've got to put it to you. On the 19th of September, when Scotland votes yes to become an independent country, there's not a single politician in Scotland that's going to allow those job losses to go through. Why? Because we're not voting for a government in the 18th of September. We're not voting for a politician in the 18th of September. We're not voting for a celebrity in the 18th of September. We're voting for the right to decide who runs our country in the 18th of September. That's what we're voting for. And once we vote to take that right into our own hands, there's not a single politician anywhere in Scotland that's going to implement 60,000 job losses in the knowledge that in 2016 they're going to be standing for election. They're going to be standing asking the people of Scotland either to return them to government in the shape of the SNP or for the Labour, the Libs and everybody else. Vote for us. We're the ones that cut 60,000 jobs. In other words, there is an immediate bonus, an immediate benefit from voting yes. We can stop austerity in its tracks. We can save 60,000 jobs in the public sector. That's the freedom that we have in our hands. We also have other freedoms. We have the freedom to save our health service. We have the freedom to save our education service. I'm fed up listening to this No Brigade telling us, oh, don't worry, vote no, nothing will happen to the health, nothing will happen to education, because it's devolved to the Scottish Parliament. Do you know what that is? It's political ignorance, it's economic illiteracy. Why? Because education and health is devolved to the Scottish Parliament. But who pays for it? Who pays for it? We raise our taxes and our revenue, we send them down to Westminster, and then Westminster doles them out. It's a bit like the parents giving out the pocket money. They dole out the money. If we go down there on the 19th of September, in the knowledge that we had the opportunity to run our own affairs, but we bottled it, what's Westminster going to say? Westminster's going to say, hey, your crowd, you're prepared to sing your Flower of Scotland at your Scotland games and your rugby games, but when you had the chance to run your own affairs, you didn't have the courage. You want us to pay? You want us to pay for a public health service? You want us to pay so that Waynes don't have to pay upfront tuition fees to go to university, when in England they're charged £9,000 a head? You think we're going to pay so that you can have it different in Scotland? You can have free prescription charges, you can have free elderly care, you can keep your health service public, when we're privatising ours? On your bike. On your bike they're going to say it is. You're going to do the same. You're going to do the same with your public services as we're doing to ours. The only way to keep the health service public, the only way to keep education free, is to vote yes in 2 weeks' time, brothers and sisters. That's the only way we're going to keep those services in the public sector and free at the point of need. There's another wee thing, and I'm going to emphasise this more over the road there. There's another wee thing we've got the freedom today. I'm fed up. I get really, really fed up with this one. Maybe no, it doesn't rock everybody's boat. Probably something to do with I've been arrested outside Faslane that many times. I forgot how many times, right? But I've got to say to you, as a wee country, as a new wee independent country, by the way I keep saying we, we'll be an average sized country. Some countries will be bigger, lots of countries will be smaller. But you know what we're going to be able to say on the 19th of September? We're going to be able to say we're a different country. We're going to be able to say we're a country that believes fundamentally that it's much more important to spend money on schools and hospitals and doctors and nurses than on weapons of mass destruction, because we're going to get rid of private nuclear weapons. We're going to get rid of private. We're going to say loud and clear, this wee country, Scotland, is a country of peace. We think it's much more important to invest in children's health and children's education and social housing. That's the important things in life, not immoral, illegal weapons of mass destruction. We're going to have a constitution, brothers and sisters, a written constitution in this new Scotland that's going to write into the constitution that our health service is public forever. It's never going to get sold off to the private vultures. That we're never going to be a home for private nuclear weapons or for biological or chemical weapons. that we're going to be a country that you know your rights, that you know that every single citizen has the right to a place in education and training or employment. Every single citizen has the right not to a poverty minimum wage, but to a living income. A living income. That's what we want in Scotland, and therefore the final question people will ask, we'll go into more detail over the road, I apologise, but the final question is, can we afford it? Can we afford to be an independent Scotland? Tommy, you want to spend more on health, you want to spend more on education, you want to build new council houses for people to live in. How are we going to pay for it? I heard Michael Patillo, some of you might have seen this wee programme 3 weeks ago. I had the pleasure, well, some people say pleasure, to share a studio, a makeshift studio with the bold Michael Buffon Patillo. He sat across me with his tartan trousers on, no pockets, he never gets into them. You know, he was a minister. He was a minister in government, he never went into them because we paid for everything. Now he's a BBC pundit and he doesn't go into them because we pay for everything. And the bold Michael listened to some of the things I was saying about an independent Scotland. I said that in an independent Scotland we could start thinking straight. We could start putting two and two together. We could look at the fact that we've got 200,000 families across Scotland today. 200,000 families and individuals that live in overcrowded conditions or are waiting for a house because they're homeless. And yet we've got hundreds of thousands of unemployed people that are required to be trained. Why don't we train the plumbers and the joiners and the brickies and the glaziers to build the houses to solve the homelessness? Isn't that something that we're worthwhile? Isn't that something that we're worthwhile? In an independent Scotland. That's what we could do. And the bold Michael sat there and then in a patronising voice he says, oh, Mr. Sheridan, what you don't understand, of course, in an independent Scotland, you'll lose England's subsidies. I thought, there goes the waste of very expensive private education, you know. This is a man pontificating, this is only a few weeks ago, by the way, English subsidies. This is what I want to finish on, brothers and sisters. Every single year, for the last 33 years, no 1, 2 or 3, 33 years in a row, this wee country, Scotland, has paid more money into the Westminster pot than we've got back from the Westminster pot. That's the reality. We are not and never have been subsidy junkies. We are net contributors to the UK economy. And by the way, see if you don't believe us, ask yourself this. See if we were subsidy junkies, you think they'd want to hang on to us? You think they'd want to keep us? They want to keep us, A, because they need our revenues, and B, because they need somewhere to dump their nuclear weapons. We are saying no to both. We are going to start spending the money that we raise in Scotland in Scotland. Businesses for independence. Final wee point and then we'll try and take a couple of questions. Businesses for Independence is an organisation that was set up for small businesses that support an independent Scotland. I spoke to them in February. They had 1,500 members. I thought, brilliant. 1,500 small businesses signed up to independence. That's excellent. I spoke with them 2 weeks ago in Cumbernauld. They've now got 2,500 members. 2,500 small businesses signed up to independence. Why? Because they think the economy is going to be a disaster. Because they think independence is going to lead to other businesses going to the wall? No, because they recognise in an independent Scotland, with a living wage, with more employment, with more dynamism, with more energy, they're going to be able to grow their small businesses. That's why they've signed up for independence. They've done the research, the independent research that shows in the last 5 years alone, see if we had kept the money that we've raised in taxes and revenues in Scotland, we would have had an extra £8.3 billion to spend in Scotland in 5 years alone. 8,300 million. That works out at £1.65 billion a year to spend on public services, to spend in health and education and housing. So when people say to you, oh but Tommy, can we afford an independent Scotland? You just say right back to them, not only can we afford an independent Scotland, but in an independent Scotland, we're not going to have political debates about what services to cut. We're going to have political debates about what services to invest in first. That's what we're going to do in an independent Scotland, because we have the wealth, we have the wherewithal to build a country that is very, very stable, that is very, very economically healthy, but most importantly of all, and as I say, I'll explain this more in there, most importantly of all, I don't want an independent Scotland that just stays the same. I want an independent Scotland that redistributes the wealth of Scotland, that raises the standard of living of all Scottish families. I want an independent Scotland, brothers and sisters, that 25 years from now, I want the children sitting on their mammy's knees 25 years from now saying, Mammy, what was poverty? Mammy, what was racism? Mammy, what was nuclear weapons? That's my vision for an independent Scotland. And it's within our grasp, brothers and sisters. We don't need to throw any stones. We don't need to pick up any weapons. All we need is a wee pencil. And we can declare our freedom 2 weeks from now. Thanks very much.
Well done, Yay!
I apologise that there's been limited, folks, in terms of the time, but is there 2 or 3 questions that people might want to ask you? If you don't mind just saying your first name, that's all. Hi, Willie.
I attended a meeting in February here in Aberdeen with Bob Crow. It's a matter of weeks before he died. Bob Crow is a passionate supporter of Scottish independence, and the reason he said it was, even though he was a born and bred Cockney, supported Millwall and all that stuff, was the biggest fear of English politicians, Westminster politicians, is if we get it, everybody in England's going to start saying, why can't we have that? Why can't we have what Scotland's got? And that's what scares them. And that's what Bob Crow told me. That's what he said.
It's a brilliant point for Willie. Bob Crow was a very close personal friend of mine, leader of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Workers Union. The type of trade union leader that if we'd marry him, then workers would have better living conditions and better wages today. I've got to say, unfortunately, we've got too many fearty hearts that are running some of the trade unions. But you know something? I make the point at my meetings that we are not abandoning the English working class. Please, any of you that are trade unionists in particular, any of you that are internationalists like myself, I'm not a nationalist, I'm a socialist. I'm standing for independence because I think it's a democratic right for Scotland to have its independence. But see, after we're independent, I don't want to turn my back on the world. I want to be one of the countries that has a hand of solidarity across the world. I want an independent Scotland to be the type of country that expels the Israeli ambassador and boycotts Israel for what they're doing to Palestine. That's the type of thing I want an independent Scotland to do. But what I say is we're not abandoning the English working class, we're leading the English working class. Why? Because when we start to do the things that we're talking about, when we start investing in health, investing in education, investing in a living wage, then the working class of England are going to say, hey, we want some of that. They're going to have to rebuild their organisations down there. They're so disillusioned, and I don't blame them. They're so disenfranchised down there. Ed Miliband, for God's sake, you wouldn't let him run a bath, never mind run a country. But that's all they've got to do. They're going to have to rebuild their organisations to try and mirror what we're going to do here in Scotland. I was invited to speak at the Belladrum Festival just a couple of weeks ago there, and Billy Bragg, the musician and socialist, was speaking before me, and he finished his contribution because he was asked, how does he hope that the vote will go on independence in Scotland? And he made a wonderful point that is similar to what Willie and I have said here and what Bob Crow said. He said, I'm very, very hopeful that the people of Scotland will have the courage to stand up and vote for independence. He says, because you know what? I hope the neighbour principle works after it. And somebody says, what do you mean? He says, well, you know what it's like when the neighbours get a new car, or the neighbours get new garden furniture, and the neighbours look out their garden fence and say, oh, I wouldn't mind some of that. That's what he hopes is going to happen with an independent Scotland, that his brothers and sisters in England will be saying, we want some of that as well. So from my point of view, independence is about building support and solidarity in England. It's not about abandoning it. Sorry.
What's going to happen to the pound then?
Brother's asked, what's your first name?
Gordon.
Gordon's asked, what's going to happen with the pound? Good question. Alongside European Union, alongside head of state. That's the type of questions that come up at these meetings. To me, they're irrelevant. They're irrelevant questions. Why? Because see, if we don't vote for independence, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Me, Gordon, I don't want in an independent Scotland the Bank of England to have anything to do with my country. That's what I don't want. I want in an if you let me finish, Gordon, you've asked a question, but let me finish. In an independent Scotland, what I want is an independent, publicly owned bank that runs a Scottish currency that's backed up with our oil and our gas reserves, which according to the Financial Times and the Economist, would be one of the most sought after currencies in the world because of the stability of our economy. And by the way, their analysis their analysis was based on withdrawing oil and gas. Because of our food and our beverages, because of our tourism, we'd be a top 20 country. With the oil and gas, we're a top 5 country. We could run our own currency.
So
That's
how
what
are
I
you
want
going
to
to
do.
buy the new currency?
Sorry,
What's
brother?
going to be called?
Sorry?
Where are you getting money for the whole of Scotland to have a new currency? Where you get you can't go to euro, you can't go to dollars. Then we still keep the English pound note here. Buck England still got to tell Scotland how to run your
You've kind of answered my question, Gordon. The first point you were asking is how can we afford a new currency? Well, I've explained how we can afford a new currency.
Because bills, we can't afford it.
Well,
Even with the
see if you're going to ask a question, then just talk over me, brother. There's no use asking a question. I'm trying to answer you. I'm trying to answer you, brother. You know, you're asking a question, I'm trying to answer. So all I can say to you is that you're not listening to me. And if you don't want to listen, that's fine. There's no reason to listen to me. What I'm saying to you is, in the last 5 years alone, if we had been on our own, we would have generated an extra £8,300 million in public money to spend in our economy. Afford the currency. We can afford 10 currencies. No problem with that, Gordon.
This is no. How you get afford it now? No, 5 years ago. This is no.
No.
This is no.
Gordon, the point about saying the last 5 years, you don't think you're listening. The last 33 years.
5 years ago. We're speaking about now.
Gordon, we have got more than enough money now, brother. More than enough money.
We're going down.
And just, it's a good
The government's going down. Once we got
I tell you what, Gordon, please, go to go and print a leaflet, put your name on it and hold a public meeting, and then everybody can come to your meeting and hear you talk, right? So please, if you could just allow other people to talk, brother. You've heard your say. Is anybody else got any questions?
No, you don't know.
Okay, brother.
We don't want to listen to
Any
it.
other questions?
No, you tell me the answer. You tell me the answer. You tell me the answer.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Gordon's shouting in my ear. Good. Yep. What's your first name? Did you say Ewan? Ewan's made a very, very important point here. And it's a negotiating point. I don't want to take the English pound, right? But they say, the SNP are saying, even maybe for 2 or 3 years, okay, that stability, then we can build our own currency. But England say, no, you can't have sterling. Well, if we don't have sterling, then why should we take a share of the UK accumulated debt? Now, the amount of debt that is apparently going to be saddled upon us is £130 billion, because the debt that they have accumulated is £1.3 trillion. I'll tell you what, see if we didn't take any debt, the idea of building a currency would be a lot easier. A lot easier, because we wouldn't have any burden at all. We'd be starting off from scratch with no debts whatsoever. I think it will be a negotiating point. There is absolutely no way that the English politicians are going to allow the English businesses to face the uncertainty of trading up here without having sterling. That is complete and utter scaremongering. Once we're established, I would like to see another wee referendum in Scotland. I'd like to see a referendum in the European Union. Personally, I'm not in favour of the European Union, some people will be, but I'd like to see a referendum on it. And I'd like to see a referendum on an independent Scottish currency as well. But I don't think there's going to be a problem here in the first couple of years. One more question, folks. I'm getting told back here. I have to go in. One more. Yourself, brother.
You back join your NATO then, for the end of the outside.
What's your name, brother?
John.
John, I completely and utterly oppose being a member of NATO. I think it's inconsistent and contradictory that we'll get rid of our nuclear weapons, but that we're going to stay in a nuclear alliance. Quite frankly, John, I want my wee country, Scotland, to have a defence force, but not to have an invading force. I don't want to invade anybody across the world. I want Scotland to be known as a country of peace, a country of environmental friendliness, that we develop our wind, our wave, our solar power, we use our oil reserves to develop clean technology and generation of energy, so that we can stand up at the world's tables and we can say Scotland isn't at war with anybody. The only thing Scotland's at war with is poverty and inequality. Thanks very much for all the